On the night of March 30th, 1990, radar stations across Belgium began tracking something none of them could identify. Police on the ground were calling in the same thing the scopes were painting. So the Belgian Air Force did what Air Forces do. It scrambled 2 F-16s. Over the next hour, their radars locked onto the target 3 times. And 3 times, the target did something no aircraft on Earth was supposed to be able to do. Then, 4 months later, the Air Force did something almost no government has done before or since. It called a press conference and showed everyone the tapes. This is UAP Press. We don't tell you what to believe, we show you the record. The witnesses on the record, the radar data a government released, and the documents that followed, and let the file speak for itself. It started 4 months earlier, on November 29, 1989, around the quiet town of Eupen, near Belgium's border with Germany. As dusk fell, reports began flooding the local gendarmerie, an enormous, silent, triangular platform moving slowly over the fields. 3 brilliant white lights shining downward from its corners, and a pulsing red light at its center. Among the witnesses that evening were 2 gendarmes, federal police officers, on patrol near the German border. They watched the object for more than an hour. These were not enthusiasts hoping to see something. They were on-duty officers, and their reports went into the record the way police reports do. Dated, signed, and specific. By the end of that single night, dispatchers had logged sightings from dozens of separate locations. Witnesses in different towns, unknown to each other, describing the same silent triangle. And that was only the beginning. Over the following months, the wave produced hundreds of reports on peak nights. And by its end, roughly 2,000 documented accounts collected by SOBEPS, the Belgian civilian research organization that mobilized to study it. A detail worth pausing on. The thing everyone kept repeating was not the lights or the size. It was the silence. Witnesses described a platform the size of a football field drifting at rooftop height, making no more sound than the night around it. Whatever people were seeing, it did not behave like anything with engines. Through the winter, the Belgian Air Force fielded the reports with unusual patience, checking each wave night against air traffic, weather balloons, and military exercises, and coming up empty. Then came the night of March 30th to 31st, 1990. Gendarmes near the town of Wavre called in the triangle again. This time, ground radar saw something too. Not one radar, several. The control reporting center at Glans registered an unknown target. So did the radar station at Semerzaki. With visual reports from police on the ground and returns on multiple independent military radars, the duty officers followed protocol. At 5 past midnight, 2 F-16 interceptors were scrambled. For over an hour, the fighters hunted the target across the Belgian night. 3 times, their onboard radars achieved lock, and each time, the data recorders captured what happened next. The target transformed its flight profile in seconds, in the most cited pass, dropping thousands of feet and accelerating from roughly 300 to over 1,100 miles per hour almost instantly. Maneuvers that would generate forces no human pilot could survive. And then it would break the lock, each time within seconds. The pilots, flying one of the most capable interceptors in NATO, never once saw the thing their radars were fighting. Whatever it was, it outmaneuvered not just their aircraft, but their sensors. Here is what makes that night singular in the world file. Visual witnesses on the ground, multiple independent ground radars, and airborne fire control radar. 3 separate layers of observation, overlapping in time, all registering something that was never identified. Cases with one of those layers are common. Cases with all 3 are vanishingly rare. In most countries, that night would have vanished into a classified annex. Belgium did the opposite. On July 11, 1990, the Belgian Air Force convened a press conference in Brussels. At the podium, Colonel Wilfried De Brouwer, Deputy Chief of Operations. On the screen behind him, the actual F-16 radar tapes. De Brouwer walked the press through the lock-ons, the accelerations, the numbers, and then said, on the record, what almost no officer in his position has ever said. The Air Force did not know what it was. Not a cover story, not a debunking, an open file presented to the public with the data attached. The Belgian military went further still. It cooperated openly with SOBEPS, the civilian research group, sharing information, comparing analyses, treating 2,000 of its own citizens' reports as evidence worth taking seriously. To this day, the Belgian wave remains the largest UAP investigation ever conducted in public view. De Brouwer never walked it back. He rose to Major General, retired, and decades later put his account in writing. Still on the record, still unexplained. The file the Belgian Air Force opened in 1990 has never been closed. Now this series owes you the other side of the file, and in this case, the other side includes a confession. The most famous image of the Belgian wave, the crisp photograph of a black triangle with 3 lights, taken at Petit-Rechain in April 1990, reproduced in 1,000 documentaries, was a fake. In 2011, 21 years later, the photographer admitted it. The iconic triangle was a painted styrofoam model, suspended and photographed in the dark. One of the most reproduced UFO photographs in history was a prank that outgrew its maker. If you have seen the Belgian triangle in a documentary, you have almost certainly seen the hoax. The skeptical file does not stop there. Later analysis of the F-16 radar data, including by physicists sympathetic to the witnesses, concluded the dramatic lock-on numbers may have been artifacts, atmospheric ducting, ground clutter, and in at least one pass, the 2 fighters possibly locking onto each other. The most spectacular data of the wave, in other words, may describe the atmosphere, not a craft. And the mass sightings themselves? Skeptics point to helicopters, aircraft seen at odd angles, and the way a wave feeds itself. Once the triangle was in every newspaper, every light in the Belgian sky became a triangle. Some of the 2,000 reports are certainly that. The question the file cannot close is whether all of them are. Because after the hoax is discarded and the radar artifacts are granted, this remains. Hundreds of witnesses on the first night, before any newspaper had printed a word, including on-duty police officers whose independent reports agreed. A government that checked every explanation it had and said so publicly. The photograph was fake. The wave was not. The Belgian wave is the rare case where honesty cuts both ways and the mystery survives anyway. The best image was a hoax, the best data may be an artifact, and the best witnesses, police, on duty, on the record, in the hundreds, have never been explained. That is what an open file actually looks like, messy, partly debunked, and stubbornly unresolved at its core. It also stands as the counterexample this whole subject needed. Proof that a modern military can face an unexplained phenomenon in public, release the data, admit uncertainty, and survive the embarrassment. 35 years later, the Belgian press conference is still the standard the file measures every government against. The Nimitz gave us the strongest sensor case. Flight 1628 gave us the deepest paper trail. Belgium gave us something rarer, a government that opened the file itself, and a lesson in how carefully you have to read what falls out. In 1994, the question landed somewhere it had never been taken seriously before. A schoolyard in Zimbabwe, where 62 children came in from recess describing the same craft and the same beings. And a Harvard psychiatrist flew across the world to find out if they were telling the truth. That's the next case file. Subscribe so you don't miss it. This is UAP Press. The file stays open.